You see this big, beautiful garden bed that I have behind me? What if I told you that this isn't a garden bed at all? This is actually 1,000 square foot of poison. You might be asking yourself, why is Ryan sitting in 5 chairs? You also might be asking yourself, how did you end up with 1,000 square foot of poison on your yard? For those of you who have been following me on YouTube, you know that I'm an organic farmer and I prefer to use methods that are free of chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, or anything synthetic. Unfortunately, I brought 1,000 square feet of poison onto my yard. How did I do that? Well, I saw an advertisement for a free organic compost on Facebook Marketplace. Seems too good to be true? It was too good to be true. This was manure coming from horses. Little did I know that many horses unfortunately are riddled with an herbicide called Grazon these days. The way that the horses get Grazon in their manure, this persistent herbicide that can last for years, is through their hay. Much of the hay that is being fed to horses is sprayed with this herbicide called Grazon. And while it does prevent weeds from growing in that hay, it also prevents your plants from growing in your organic garden. I had to find that out the hard way. I'm making this video so you don't make the same mistake I did. Now, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. I actually believe that the people that advertised this organic compost, they genuinely thought that their compost was free of herbicides and things like Grazon. It actually comes down to the farmer. We're the ones that are responsible for testing this compost before we bring it into our garden. Here is a garden bed that is planted with organic soil that I purchased from the store. In this soil, I planted these royal burgundy open pollinated beans and I watched them grow. So here is a set of beans that have been growing for several weeks. You'll see this initial growth, you'll see secondary growth, and even the tertiary growth, and you see full leaf development, no issues, growing very healthy in the organic soil from the store. Now I'm in the garden bed that is in question. I have added the horse manure to this garden bed. I let it sit for several weeks before I planted these beans to make sure that the compost wasn't hot. And then I planted those exact same royal burgundy beans that I planted in my certified organic soil that I bought from the store. And if you look at these beans that are growing from the horse manure compost, you'll see some clear signs that they are not growing properly. You'll see that the leaves are discolored, the second growths are not sprouting. And if you look at some of these beans, they never even grew a leaf. They just have gnarled little branches where all the attempts at growing the leaves are twisted and curled, and they're displaying clear signs that they are not growing at the same rate or the same efficiency as the beans that I planted in the organic soil. I had them in the soil for the exact same amount of time. That way I know they've had sufficient time to grow the second and third blush of leaves, and it never came. So obvious signs that this soil has been infected with the Grazon, the persistent herbicide that prevents that second growth of the leaves. And unfortunately, because of that, this 1,000 square foot garden that I busted my hump putting together, it all has to go. Now, not everyone is as fortunate as me to have a neighbor that has a tractor. But luckily, I was able to exchange a day of my work for using his tractor. He was able to come in and remove all of the herbicide-ridden soil from the yard. And instead of it taking me months and months to put the garden bed together, as it did, we were able to clear all of this infected soil within a few days. He was even so kind as to work around my moringa, which I planted directly in this garden bed. So God bless him for being willing to drive around the moringa every time he had to move another load of the soil. Thank you. So there you have it. A once seemingly beautiful garden bed, now a barren wasteland. It's a shame that manure that used to be the gold standard for garden fertilizer is now compromised. You have to be careful if you're bringing manure onto your farm. Now, not all manures are riddled with herbicides and pesticides. When I lived in Hawaii, we had goats. We cut down the nitrogen fixing trees, fed them directly to the goats. And when we put them in the stanchion to milk them, we fed them the old brown coconut meat as well. So we knew exactly what was going into their feed. So we were confident to use that manure as amendments for our garden beds. If you are going to use manure, you want to test that supply chain, ask questions, be very diligent to ask what is being fed to those animals. And if there's any type of hay that's being fed from off of the farm, it's likely that there is herbicides or pesticides in that manure. The second step that you have to take before ever bringing manure onto your farm is performing a bioassay. A bioassay just means growing two plants side by side, one with the manure and the other one with a store-bought organic potting soil. If you have those two side by side and you plant something that's quick growing like beans, within a couple weeks to 3 to 4 weeks, you are going to have clear signs whether the manure has this persistent herbicide. You will see the discoloration, you will see no second growth, and you will see the twisted and gnarled growth of the trunk of that beanstalk. These are clear signs that you have the herbicide in your manure. And at that point, do not bring it onto your property if you don't want to make the same mistake that I did. Lighten up. It's not the end of the world if this happens to you. Through this process, I've learned so much about supply chains, about fertilizers, and about my own garden. Despite that area being completely barren right now, in the long run, I'm going to put a lot of love and attention into that garden bed, and it's going to turn out to be more fertile in the long run. It might take a little bit of time to remediate that soil, but ultimately it's going to be better soil because of it. So if this happens to you, it's not the end of your garden journey. Stay focused, and before you know it, you'll have a viable, clean, organic garden bed ready to be planted.